both sides. If you've any views about that debate, I wonder if you do, just log on to bbc.co.uk/thebigquestions and follow the links to where you can continue the discussion online. Send us your views about our last big question as well. Is Christianity being marginalised? And if you'd like to be in the audience for a future show, you can email audience@menton.tv. We are in Cambridge next week, Cardiff on February the 26th, and we're in York the week after that. Well, Friday's judgment against the holding of prayers at Bideford Council meetings provoked the former Archbishop of Canterbury, Lord Carey, to say Christians are being pushed into the background by a secular establishment that seems to be embarrassed by the fact that Britain is a Christian country. Is Christianity being marginalised? There was also the ruling on the couple who run the bed and breakfast, wasn't there? So, Dr. Evan Harris, why does an atheist at a council have the right to object to prayers, but an elderly Christian couple haven't got the right to object to two gay men?
Well, they do have a right to object to two gay men, for a start. So what secularism is about ending religious privilege. It's not about whether people should not be religious anymore, but ending religious privilege and not allowing people in the commercial world or in public service to discriminate, either on the grounds of religion or against people on the grounds of sexual orientation or indeed gender. And indeed, you were mentioning apartheid earlier in South Africa, the Dutch Reformed Church used religious rights to say that there was a religious basis for racial discrimination. So what this is saying is that if people who are counsellors are religious and want to pray, pray before the meeting, pray at home, pray after the meeting, but don't summon all counsellors, this is what the ruling said, to a meeting where, as part of the formal agenda, they pray, or they have, you know, I don't know, they could have a religious service, or they could have singing the Internationale. All those things are out with the purposes of spending taxpayers' money on council business.
Steve?
So it's not, and you can't just say it's tradition, because there's lots of things that were traditional that we've said that are no longer...
Steve.
I agree with that. The question is not whether or not this is a Christian country, it's a question of whether or not the institutions of governance in this country should be explicitly tied to a particular religion, and in fact one church within that religion.
Which we discussed last week.
Exactly. No, why not have a secular state? That does not affect the religious beliefs or practices.
Rose, do you feel Christians are being marginalised?
I do think Christians are being marginalised, and I want to underline that we are a Christian country. We're not a secular country.
What does that mean? Are we a white country? Because there's more whites than anyone else.
No. The
So
very foundation of who we are in Britain was formed on Christianity.
I don't think that's right at all.
It is right. Is
that historically right?
Disrespectful for the ancient Britons.
Well, it impacts. It impacts in the last 2,000. It impacts on our laws. It impacts on our views. About who we are. It is about who we are.
But can I just say, that's because we were a theocracy. You couldn't get into Parliament for hundreds of years unless you were religious, so it's not a surprise that the people who made the laws were religious, and those were based on the religion at the time. That is not an argument for saying, if we were starting from here, that there should be a theocratic underpinning to the country.
We're not starting from here. This is where we are now. And we cannot just throw it all away because there are a few people who decide that we are atheists or we're agnostics or we just don't believe.
But you were fighting, in the last debate, you were vigorously defending, you were attacking discrimination against women. So what about this B&B couple?
I see this as discrimination against people.
What about
who are
discrimination
Christians
against homosexuals by Christians?
But this is not about I don't believe we should be discriminating against homosexuals.
So you agree with the court in that case?
I do not believe we should be discriminating, full stop.
So do you agree with the court judgment that said that devout Christians, and no one doubts their sincerity, are entitled to their beliefs, but if they're running a commercial service, they can't have a sign saying no gays, just like you can't have a sign saying no gypsies or no blacks.
Absolutely.
You have to understand that there's a political...
There wasn't a sign, they were just turned down.
Yes. Well, it would have been more helpful to have a sign, rather than have people schlep all the way to
There is a level
to be turned away by the innkeeper.
Yeah. There is a level of intolerance that is growing in this country.
Alan de Botton, is that right?
I think it is important that those who are Christians should not be afraid to be Christians.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, let's have a... Look, I think for... listen, let me give you a plug. You've written this book, Religion for Atheists. Contradiction in terms, some say. Fascinating tome, others say. But are Christians on the back foot in this country?
Look, I think that no group has a monopoly on goodness, scepticism, tolerance, etc. And there is a branch of atheism led not far from here in North Oxford by somebody who asserts their views with such vehemence and has an army of followers who target
Professor
anyone...
Dawkins?
Professor Dawkins, who follows anyone who... I mean, I've been personally attacked simply on the basis of saying that religion is not all bunk. If as an atheist you say, I'm an atheist, but religions haven't got everything wrong, you are in the firing line. And I think that must be wrong. You can't have a system where the right is only in the camp of one body. Tolerance and kindness and goodness exist in different places. They float around, and to say, well, I'm an atheist, so I'm good, or I'm a religious person, and that person is
Professor
nuts.
Dawkins gets a lot of vile abuse from people of religion as well, who decry...
It's a very heated
decry
atmosphere.
some of the more rational things that he says even, and also take him out of context and do quote mining and put him on YouTube when he's saying things he's not really saying. So you can understand why he's a bit irked sometimes, can't you?
Of course, and there's a very fractious atmosphere where religious people feel sorry for those who don't believe, and those who don't believe patronise and feel sorry for those who do believe.
The reality is that for those of us who actually have faith and for those of us who believe, irrespective of whichever the religious background, it is something quite real. It's not a coat that we put on depending on the weather. It is who we are. And so to ask us not to want to pray, as the majority of that body in that particular place, I believe they voted twice.
If they voted to sacrifice a goat.
Oh,
It's no difference in principle. No one's saying that you cannot have your beliefs and that you cannot pray at home or when you get to the meeting, but just not have it as a formal part.
It's a while since they sacrificed a goat in Bideford on the council. They have prayed. To be fair, they've done this for centuries and they voted to keep it. So that's democracy.
In animal sacrifice centuries, they burnt people at the stake for centuries. I'm not making that comparison, of course I'm not. The principle is that the state should not favour one religion. We don't have blasphemy anymore, which was opposed by many in the Church of England, saying that we should keep blasphemy laws. We should just have that separation.
But the state
in America,
is
they have that separation.
But over here, the church is established. We have a constitution that recognises Christianity in a unique way. And when I talk to my Muslim friends and Jewish friends, they are grateful for the umbrella of faith that we have in this country, because we are a country that takes faith seriously.
And doesn't take non-faith seriously.
Well, I think we respect atheists and agnostics that engage, and I think there's no. I'm not being patronising at all.
Well, you're
I really
saying
am not,
because the church is established, therefore it should have privilege. Why should the church have privilege? God doesn't demand
I think I'm
privilege.
speaking de facto. It does have privilege. It has huge privileges.
And it shouldn't. It should.
No, but that's the way we're organised.
Is with the underprivileged.
Christina, just answer the question. Do you think Christians are marginalised in this country?
No, I actually disagree. I think.
Do actually.
Do you?
No.
Let Christina first.
No,
I'll get along the line, don't worry.
In this instance, we are being marginalised.
Yeah.
And the neo-atheists and the aggressive ones, not Alan, but the aggressive ones...
He's a nice atheist, isn't he?
are trying to marginalise...
Suicide atheists, they're very militant.
Trying to marginalise Christianity. But I think I don't feel particularly marginalised when I speak to some of my Muslim and Jewish friends and they say, let me tell you about being marginalised.
Okay. Are you a nice atheist or an aggressive atheist?
I'm a nice atheist. I'm very friendly. I treat everybody equally. And what I'd say is what's being marginalised is not religion, but what's being marginalised, luckily, in modern society is sexism, is homophobia, is discrimination, is backwards myths and cults and superstitions. And it's right that they are marginalised.
There's no doubt that Christianity has taken a back seat in this country, because we now live, unfortunately, in my opinion, in the age of militant, aggressive secularism and atheism. And I think, because you're intolerant. Now, for example, take the Bideford example. Now, whether they're talking about the price of goat meat or about having the right to pray, it was a democratic decision. These guys want to have it both ways. Democracy when it pleases them, and dictatorship when it doesn't.
What do you think, sir?
Well, I think we're at risk of muddying the waters if, from what I understand, Lord Ousley's, Mr. Justice Ousley's judgment was solely in respect of the what was it?
Local Government Act 1972.
It was anti-legislation. That's all it was. It didn't fit in with